welcome back once again to Talking with Tech. This is Lucas Duber, joined by Chris Begay. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm very well. And Rachel Madel, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you guys?
Good. It's actually sunny in Portland for once. So I don't know what to do with myself. So Chris, you had the opportunity to talk with Ellen Winchester and Andrea Gardner. Tell us a little bit about
what you're
that.
about to hear in this interview is them talking all about the training that they do they think of it as 3 tiers of training. And the tiers are really different people that they train. So they train parents and they train teachers, and then they really take it on themselves to train the community. When they actually go out to communities and work with community partners, like how do we make our entire environment better for people with disabilities? And so they've kind of taken that out. They're going to talk about that.
I'm really excited for that because I feel like it's hard to envision what the therapy that we do, how that translates to the real world, right? Especially, if you're in a private practice, you're in a school, you hope that those skills transfer, but it's not always the case that you get the experience of seeing a child in the community. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm excited just the concept of autism friendly communities, right? And how we construct something like that. It's been on my mind a lot. One argument that I heard pretty recently from someone, and I'm not endorsing this argument, but it made me think, was that the process of giving as many accommodations as we do in the classroom can be a disservice for folks that then are entering a community environment where there are no such accommodations, right? Where it is not friendly from a sensory standpoint, these other things. What do you think about that statement? And how can we create opportunities in the community that are sensory friendly?
Well, I think people try in the world. I mean, I think if you ask people, well, geez, can I make my service or my organization or the place that I'm at, people to come even more friendly to more people? Most people want to help and want to make it as inviting and as welcoming. They want to provide as many accommodations. They just either don't think of it or don't know how. So I think it's an educational piece. We have to educate the community.
Yeah. So actually I just posted on my Facebook group. There's a zoo in Pennsylvania that was just named the world's first autism certified zoo, which is really, really awesome, actually. It's really close to where I grew up. And I think we need more of that, right? And it made national news, which was really cool. And they just make sure that their facility is autism friendly. And I think the biggest piece is that sensory element. So making sure that, there's not artificial lighting and really loud noises that we can, kind of prevent. And I think these considerations are something that we're hopefully going to be seeing a lot more of, so that kids with autism and, adults with autism can experience all the same things that everybody else experiences, just taking into consideration their special considerations.
Yeah, I think the zoo is a great example. And I know that there are movie theaters that have special sensory-friendly films, so that maybe the lights aren't as dark or the music isn't turned up as loud, or, you can actually get up and move around and no one's going to be like, hey, sit down, put your phone away. It's meant to be more inviting to more people. Or there's grocery stores that are having certain hours where they change the lighting and change the music that's playing and things like that. And so those are just a few examples. And I bet you there's even more than we're not even touching, right? And so I wonder if we invited our listeners to say, well, I know this organization or I know this company, and they could go and maybe post it on our Facebook group. Show off what your community is doing, that are moving in this direction, that are trying to be more inclusive and accommodating other people.
Yeah, I would love to hear those. So if you are familiar with any cool ideas out there or things that you've seen happen in your community or just things that you'd like to see, come find us, Talking with Tech on Facebook. I'd love to hear about it. I think, the great thing about hearing about those ideas is then you can generalize them out, right? In our area, I've seen a lot of we have the movie theaters that do these things. We have there's even a martial arts college here that does a sensory friendly class. I've seen the grocery stores do it. One really creative one that I really like out here is the Portland Airport does an Autism Day, where you can actually go and bring your child, and you even go board an airplane in sort of a mock experience, and and then exit, which I relate with because I don't like flying, so need to acclimate myself to it.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of families, and things that we take for granted, like going to the hairdresser or going to the dentist. Children with autism have a really, really tough time with those things. And I love, practitioners that are really proactive. I was working with a client and they had a really hard time at the dentist. And this dentist was so wonderful. They had to go, I think 5 or 6 times as like a trial practice run before the actual dentist appointment. So I just think that, if you kind of reach out and ask people if they're willing to do a trial run, an airport's a little bit more challenging. We can't shut down an entire airport. But I think that people are really receptive. That awareness piece isn't there, right? They don't understand that what sensory challenges even mean. So I think that's what we can kind of work towards is sharing that information and sharing it with, the teachers that we work with and really just supporting that education piece.
No better time than right now. Better Hearing Speech Month is when we're recording this, right? So go out and try and promote this sort of idea. There's a website I want to tell you about. It's called autismmclean.org. And what it has is an autism-friendly sort of checklist. So if you were going to, yes, I'm aware of autism, but I want to actually do something to make it better for students with autism to come, or people with autism to come to my place of business. Well, I can go through this survey and this checklist and I can say, well, I can make these adjustments. I can make these accommodations, and you can make your the entire experience and environment more inviting for more people.
That's great. It's good to know about that resource. I know another place to look is Autism Society of America. Their website, not quite the same thing, but they have just like a resource directory that gets really hyper local. Like if you're looking for a dentist in your area that maybe has experience with that, often you can find one, through the website, or same thing with barbers, haircuts, that sort of thing. But I think you nailed it too, Chris, when you said that I think everybody's trying, right? I think that people are absolutely willing to try. And so like Rachel said, if you just reach out, I've even been in situations where I had a student that wanted to see a movie and it was going to be a little while until the next autism friendly showing. And I called the theater and asked, and they said, yeah, just come at 10 a.m. We'll do something for you. And I mean, it was great. It was really accommodating. I think people for the most part will do things like that if you ask.
And another strategy that I use is for children who have a hard time going to the dentist or the hairdresser, you name it, anything out in the community, social stories that are tailored to a specific child and their specific experience are so effective. I was working with a client and he was going for surgery, and we actually read a social story about it, and there were pictures of the hospital, pictures of the doctor, explaining exactly what was going on. And I've never seen this student more engaged. He was talking more. He was asking questions. It was so fascinating. And I really think we can utilize social stories in a way that not only helps prepare children to go out in the community, but also I think promotes engagement, because, now with technology and things like Pictello and all these apps where you can create your own social stories, it's so easy to just kind of take any situation and talk about it in a social context.
And another great thing about preparing social stories or communication narratives is that it then lets you think about all the opportunities to embed communication in that student's experience, which is cool. You get to kind of pre-visualize what that's going to look like for them, and think through some of the teachable moments. Well, I'm excited to hear more about it. So without further ado, let's listen to Chris Begay's interview with Ellen Winchester and Andrea Gardner.
Hi, everybody. This is Chris Bugay for Talking with Tech, and I am joined today with two people from down under, down in Australia. Right now, I have Ellen Winchester and Andrea Gardner. Am I saying your names correctly?
Yes. Yep, that's right.
Excellent. And so tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right, well, I'll go first. This is Ellen speaking. So I'm a speech pathologist, and I work for an organisation called Autism Spectrum Australia. I've worked for them for nearly 10 years now. So, my roles have been working in our schools. I've been working in our early intervention settings, working mostly in homes and schools and preschools. We don't have any clinic-based work in our organisation. We do everything in context and in the community. And I'm currently managing a transdisciplinary team of therapists. So, yeah, that's me. About you, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm Andrea Garner, and I'm a teacher at Aspect. I've been there about 4 years now. So I work in a couple of capacities. So firstly, I'm a teacher, so I'm on class sometimes. But I also manage all the research projects that we're doing. So we do participatory action research. So we just identify the gaps in our service, and then we go to the research to see if there's anything there that can fill those gaps. And if there's not, then we design it.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I don't know many places that do this. So in the United States, we have like public schools. So you don't work for, it's not, what is Aspect exactly?
So we're a non-for-profit organisation. So so technically for a long time we've been a charity, but all of the funding systems in Australia for disability have recently changed. So at the moment we're in the therapy team anyway, we're working off a new funding model where a lot of the funding goes directly to individuals instead of organisations. But then in the schools that we have, we're not a government school, or I guess we're kind of like a private school because we don't really get much government funding. Parents pay school fees to come to our school. But you know, the cool thing about that is that we get to kind of use our own model and everything. So we still have to follow our state curriculum at our school, but we also have what we Aspects has called the Aspect Comprehensive Approach to Education. So basically that means we align every strategy that, you know, is autism friendly or that would benefit people in the autism spectrum. So we use positive behaviour support. We have a learning support team. We involve families in all of our planning and intervention. What else have I missed, Andrea? We're transdisciplinary.
Transitions,
community support. So we try and embed all these other elements that have been shown to be beneficial for people in the autism spectrum within the curriculum at our schools. So that's it in a very, very brief explanation of our schools.
So walk me through it. Let's say I'm a parent and I have a child and the child is demonstrating some sort of difficulties. Maybe it's communication. And what do? I come to your school, and do I already have the funding? Have I already gone through someplace else to get some sort of communication device, or is that all through you? You help me navigate that process. How does it all work?
Well, that's a really complex question. So, some families might come to us with a device already. Some families might come to us, they might have an iPad with a communication app on it. Some families come to us with nothing. Some families come to us really well educated about what they want, but they don't know how to get it, and we help them from there. But yes, some people will have already been working with our therapy team since the child was 2 or 3. So we might have already set up the communication device and they come to us ready to go. That's happening more often now that children are getting more therapy funding from an early age. But there's still people who come and they don't know, what's out there, and they don't know about high-tech AAC. They don't know what's going to be best for their child. And so a big part of the project that Andrea and I have been working on for the last 5 years now is really about trying to work with families exactly where they're at, trying to understand the level of knowledge they have about AAC, really providing them with as much knowledge as possible, discussing pros and cons of all the different types of systems if their child needs one, and then just really putting empowering them to make the decision about what's going to be the best for their child. So we're not the type of service that says, okay, at our school you need to be using this type of system. I specialise in the LAMP approach, and that's certainly the approach I love to implement, and I'm a LAMP trainer in Australia, but I still really mostly believe in parent choice and control over intervention. And a big part of our work really has been about educating the families so that, we're reducing the risks of that long-term device abandonment. So we want to empower them. We want to educate them. We want to give them that opportunity to make the choice so that we keep the device with them long-term. We help them choose the system. They choose the system, and then we'll provide education through a range of models, which Andrea has done a lot of work on. In terms of the different training models that we use with families to help them know how to use the device effectively with their child and in partnership with them.
That's exactly what I want to hear about. So, Andrea, tell me about these models. What do you use?
Well, it's interesting because, as Ellen said, the parents might come to us with nothing. They might come to us knowing what they want. But it's also a two-way street at our organization. So sometimes the new family arrives at school, at which point we would refer them to the speech pathologist to get them assessed and determine what system would be best for that particular child. So, and then at that point, some families will also see Ellen and get a private therapist at home to further educate their child. But in terms of the training that we provide, we started with a flipped model, a flipped education model, in which we provided online education. We provided a DVD. We provided all kinds of static and dynamic resources. And then that allowed us to target which teachers we needed to see about which particular skills. Because we have only one speech pathologist at school, and they're only part-time. So,
okay.
So you can imagine trying to visit every teacher and every teacher's aide, as well as all of the parents, wouldn't work very well. In our context, however, our technology isn't always up to par for delivering such models. So we've actually, through our research, discovered a blended learning model, which incorporates not only the static references, which is in the form of a workbook at this point, but we also have interactive online videos. So people can watch good practice. They have to respond to questions about that practice. They can't move on until they've mastered their learning. And that has allowed us to see where we need to target further education and one-to-one practice. It also has something called Padlet, which is an app, basically an online pin board. So we post all kinds of new resources there because we are bound by the curriculum as well. So for teachers, it's really difficult to incorporate the LAMP approach, the methodology, and the use of a device in a classroom when you maybe have one or two children on those devices and the other two children are hyperlexic or something. Right. So we're really trying to support the teachers in understanding that this isn't every day, all day. This is the child's voice. And yes, you are bound by the curriculum to teach certain things, but we might have to go about it in a different way. For the parents, we've also incorporated workshops rather than lectures. So the parents receive a DVD that has all that comprehensive foundation information on it, which they can refer back to at all times. And then they come to a workshop where they actually utilize those skills that they've learned about through the DVD. And we also use, we formerly used TalkBox, which was an app. It's a voice messaging app, but we have switched to Voxer because TalkBox didn't update with the last update. Technology can be your friend sometimes, sometimes not. So we've switched to Voxer, and what that allows us to do is give real-time feedback. So a good example is one of our parents sent us a photo. They had taken their child horseback riding. And this is a child that was on skill set 2 of our assessment. So using one word communications at that point. And immediately I sent back a photograph of how to find the words like and fun to her. So she turned to her son and went, "Oh, you like, it's really fun." And so we're able to support the parents in real time, but it also allows them, you know, at midnight, as many of our parents are up at midnight, having just got their children to bed, and they think of a question they have, they can actually post that to us on Voxer, and we'll pick it up in the morning when we arrive at work or whatever it is. So that also allows communications through the school holidays because our speech pathologist still runs Voxer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you just said so much and I have so many questions based on everything you just said. So let's start with Voxer, the last thing there. So what it really sounds like is you have a system, the tool Voxer, it's an app that people can download, like you said. It's free, right?
It is.
Yep. And people can use their voice to record their question. That doesn't have to be typing or texting. It can be texting if they want.
It can be typed, or it can be photo or video as well.
And then it provides both synchronous and asynchronous communication. Like you said, they can, but the part that I'm really fascinated about is that there's lots of tools that do async. You could email you at midnight and you pick it up in the morning, right? But but that synchronous communication is like remote coaching, you know. I know there's lots of places where in my practice in the public school, I'll go into a classroom and I'll sit with a paraprofessional or a teacher, and then I'll be like, okay, watch me, I'm going to do this, and now it's your turn, you do it, you know. And that's what you're talking about, but doing it remotely because you can't be everywhere at once, but you could jump in real time and say, okay, here's what you need to do. That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And really innovative.
Well, the dynamic nature of it is what seems to be catching on. So it also allows those parents that do better, because everybody has a different learning style. And we know in adult education that you need the information that you need to apply right now, and not things 6 months ago and not things 6 months from now. You need the present information. So by having Padlet, those parents that do better with reading something, chewing it over, and then they have a question, they can Voxer us the question. Or those parents that do better going to the workshop and, they mull it over, but they're not really very talkative in the workshop, but then they have a question, they can post it on Padlet if they prefer. So it allows people to interact with us in the way that they're most comfortable and that they're going to gain the most out of it. So,
totally.
But same thing for the teachers. Yeah.
Totally. It's this whole concept of universal design for learning, where students give them multiple modalities, but that doesn't end once they graduate. Let's do that for adults as well. It sounds so cool. Yeah. Let me ask you about the blended learning and the DVD that you mentioned, the flipped model and then the blended learning model. Those videos that you mentioned, did you make them, or are they something that you purchased, or is it something you scavenged online and said, hey, can we use your videos? Well, tell me about what those look like.
Oh, they feature Ellen, the beautiful Ellen. So we actually made those videos. Ellen had been repeating the same beautiful, very informative lecture, but it took a full day. And, she was saying the same thing over and over. But we also, in our school, we will have children enter at any time in the term, any time in the year. We will have, which means that not only does that family need to understand what the device is, how it uses, what's the LAMP approach, blah, 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 but also the teachers and the aides may not have had a child on a device in their class, and now they do. So we're in a situation where there's constant flow and change, and the need for learning can be immediate. So Ellen can talk to you a little bit more about the content of the DVD, but she is split into 12 chapters, and it has everything from what is AAC, what is communication, to here is how you operate a device that is using the MinSpeak language or has the word for life language. But Ellen can cover why we've done that, because her voice got tired.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other content we wanted to cover, as well as just what is AAC. So we really wanted to make sure we were looking at helping parents really understand how the diagnosis of autism specifically impacts their child's communication as well. So we kind of went straight back to some of those details in, just in terms of helping them understand where their children were at, and, how to respond to them, how to even help their receptive language as well. So we use a lot of visual supports and things, and how to modify the way you're speaking and all of that. So we kind of went into a lot of that stuff, and we've split the DVD up as well in terms of where the children were assessed to be on the AAC profile. So we would assess them on the AAC profile, try to determine their level, and then we would give parents the DVD with the information based on where their children were at now. So they weren't having to kind of watch a DVD about a level that they're not even on yet, or, you know, a level that's below where they are. They could just watch the DVD in terms of where they're at now, strategies that they need now to move forward. We have a model of education for the parents, and we have a model of education for the teachers as well. So we were trying to develop something individual for both different groups to kind of suit the needs that they have. So the demands on teachers in terms of their time and resources was different to the parents' demands on time and resources. So, you know, we wanted to kind of develop something that was going to be more applicable to both. So the DVD really is for just the parents. And so the way we've written it and the content is in all very simple parent-friendly language. I don't use any like jargon or anything like that. You know, we explain everything really simply. We, go right back to basics. We kind of don't really take for granted any knowledge that they may or may not have. We kind of go right back to the basics for them. And the online interactive videos is a new idea that we have, really that's for about educating the teachers. So we'd be kind of, one of the examples we used is, you know, just say a video of, it might be me or it might be Andrea interacting with a child on the device, and, you know, it might have questions on there about like, you know, what strategy did she use in this point to support him to express you know, that particular word on the device. And then, you know, there might be multiple choice questions that pop up, or there might be questions afterwards that come up as well for them to answer. So yeah, they're two different
two different purposes
models. Yeah.
What did you use to build? Was it like, is it Moodle, or what tools did you use to build an online course? Or is it just like a Google form? They watch a video and answer some Google form. How'd you build it?
I'm going to throw that into Andrea because that's been an ongoing.
Yeah. So the original online course was built through Aac Campus, which is a free version of Moodle, effectively. Being free, it's not pretty. It's a bit clunky. But it allowed us, the issue that we had was our organization has an LMS, but it's really a passive participation LMS. So we didn't want that. We wanted that dynamic, collaborative participation. So we wanted teachers to be able to post their lesson plan and people give feedback on that. We wanted chat rooms and discussion forums and all that sort of thing. So that's why we went with Aac Campus. Unfortunately, as I said, our technology is not always updated, so it made it a little bit difficult. But so we used Aac Campus, and then we also had we used Screenomatic or Screencast for the video to make the movie of Ellen. Screencast-o-matic, that's the one. Yes. So everything we used is free because as a nonprofit organization and a school, we don't have any money.
We like free. Free is doable for everybody, right? Anyone can get on and do it free. Yeah, cool.
That's exactly right. And same with Voxer. You know, all these things. Like, we can't ask people to turn around and spend money buying apps and stuff for what we want to do. So that's basically what we've used. To make the interactive videos. I used Active Presenter, which you can get a free version of. So Active Presenter is like a very free or cheap version of Articulate software. Mm-hmm. So I put the video in there, and then the questions pop up, and you can't move on until you answer the question correctly. And that allows us to make sure that people are actually gaining the information we want them to gain, rather than the traditional style of click through all the buttons, answer the quiz questions, and be done with it. You know, and they didn't really pick anything up. You know,
I've never done it. I've never done that to anybody.
No, me neither. No, I always am diligent and focused in
All right, let me ask you another question that I think you both sort of mentioned or touched on. So, Andrea, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned level 2, and you were talking about like where a student was language development-wise. No, stage 2, right?
Skill set 2.
Yeah, skill set 2. And then, Ellen, you mentioned AAC profiles. Can you tell me, are those two things related? Like that you, how does that work?
Yeah,
go ahead, Ellen.
So the term skill set 2 is, the word skill set, I guess, is how the AAC profile determines the level that a child is at, where they're assessed at on that. So one reason why we really love the AAC profile is how we can really assess a child's communicative competence. So, we're looking at how they are communicating and, showing us their knowledge in terms of how they can operate their device, how they can show us their linguistic knowledge and their linguistic use, how they're using their device socially, and how they're using their device strategically. Now, one reason I really love the AAC profile for children on the autism spectrum is that the amount of children that we have that are like, technological like whizzes, they can just whip around a device and, they know how to use all the functions, that they know how to turn it on and off. They know how to get into the settings, even if there's a lock on there. They know how to find any word on there, but they cannot use their device socially, or they cannot use their device, to express words for different meanings, So for children on the autism spectrum, we were kind of like, why can this child find so many words on there, but they just cannot use it in a social context? Or, he can make these really long sentences, but he still can't tell me something really basic, like going to the bathroom or asking for a drink. And, it's just because they have a social impairment, whether they've got the device there or not to give them the words, they still have a social impairment because they've got autism spectrum disorder. So we really love the AAC profile because we can measure that, and then we can give teachers strategies around that. So, we can measure whether they can use a different system if their device is broken that day, because then we're assessing their strategic competence. We can assess the fact that they may have, 30 words on there, but then can't, just say stop if a child's taken their toy or mine or something like that, if they can't use their words socially. So we really love that we can directly assess those things, because, our teachers have so much on their plate with the curriculum and just, all the other things they've got to do. If they've got to write a behaviour support plan or have IEP meetings with parents, there's so much for them to do. And they might miss some of those really subtle factors about, that child can say 50 words on there. You could sit and test him all day and say, where's this word? Where's this word? He can show you, but he doesn't know how to use them. So we love the AAC profile for that reason. We can say this child might be on skill set 4 for their operational learning, but they might only be on skill set 2 for their linguistic learning or their social learning. And then we can present all of that information to a parent in an IEP meeting and discuss that with a teacher and say, look, we've got these 4 areas of learning and this is where your child is at the different areas, and what's your priority for them? What do you really want him to be doing at home? What do you really want him to be doing in the classroom? And then we can use that assessment to directly inform their IEP goal. So the children have their curriculum goals, but then they also have an IEP goal. And the IEP will give the child like a goal in terms of their different areas of their social impairment of autism. So they will have a communication goal, they'll have a sensory goal, they'll have a learning and behaviour goal, and they might have, and they'll have like a social goal as well. So we use the AAC profile to determine usually the communication or the social goal on there as well.
So do you find that you're doing the AAC profile yearly?
So ideally, what we want to be able to do, so in Australia we have 4 school terms, so the terms go for about 10 weeks. And so in term 1, which is obviously the first term of the year, we like to use the AAC profile to set their initial goals. And then ideally we would be doing it again in term 3 just to assess whether we need to change the goal, or maybe the goal needs to be the same, but we need to change our strategies or our approach. Maybe we kind of got the strategy wrong. And then we'd ideally have a quick look over that again at the end of term 4, so that the teacher the following year can just pick up the AAC profile, see exactly where the child was, and follow on from there. So the other reason we like it, I forgot to say this before, is that we kind of found that even though teachers were doing a handover to each other from year to year, sometimes that real critical information about where the child was kind of getting lost in that interpretation of from one teacher to the next. And, you know, each teacher's experience is different as well. So you might have a child who's a whiz on their device, but the teacher picking them up the next year is, you know, back to kind of square one. And at least if we have the AAC profile saying this is exactly where they're at, we can go in and support them directly at that level. Yeah.
Awesome. Andrea, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, what I was going to say is from a teaching perspective, we love the AAC profile because it helps with the link to literacy. So we're bound by the curriculum. We have to teach, you know, speaking and listening, reading and viewing, writing, punctuation, phonics, all those sorts of things. And by having the AAC profile, we can actually justify why we're teaching whole word at a certain point, rather than teaching phonics, or why we're teaching those particular words and that kind of language rather than something else, because we also focus on core vocabulary rather than fringe vocabulary. So it's also been supportive with our executive team and with our overarching body called BOSTIS for the curriculum in justifying how we are introducing language, because the children are acquiring it in a different way.
So you've been doing this, Andrea, you said 4 years you've been a teacher there, and Ellen, you've been there for, what did you say, 11 years, 10, 11 years?
Nearly 10, but I've been at Aspect for nearly 10, but probably at the school for 5 or 6 years. Yeah.
So how have you seen it evolve over the last, let's say, 5 years, 4 or 5 years? What is the AAC profile really working for you? Are people happy with it? And then not just the AAC profile, but everything you've been doing. How have you seen it evolve over the years?
That's also another really big question. So when I got there, the model for just how the therapy team worked as it on itself is really different to how it works now. So we used to just work off a referral system. So there would be, myself, the speech pathologist. We'd also have the occupational therapist. We'd have the psychologist. And then we'd just get referrals in from teachers that we would go in and then address whatever was kind of going on. But because, again, as Andrea said before, we were all part-time and we had, so many children in the school, we can't work with them all in a one-on-one context, which I know happens a lot in the States with Medicaid funding. We kind of try to work more in a consultative kind of model for the teachers. So we would just really have to go in and kind of address the issue on the referral right then and there. We'd probably see the child a few times, give the teacher some strategies, but just because of the large caseload, we would then have to kind of sign off and move on. Our learning support team, really felt that what was happening was that we were kind of just getting children really at crisis point, because teachers might, not be sure that there was an issue until it kind of got really urgent, or it might have been only a small issue, but then because of the time component, until we could actually get there, the issue would really evolve into this big kind of incident. So we felt we were kind of just going in and addressing issues when they were really big, and what we really wanted to do was change our whole model and try to be more preventative. So we changed a lot of things. So we're trying to get in and do a lot more group programs, a lot more just systemic changes in terms of assessment and intervention. Just doing things like having regular site meetings in different classrooms, so that we were kind of identifying issues when they were really just very early. We'd be able to just go in and say to a teacher, hey, we just want to sit in your classroom today and we can just help out. Then we might be able to say, have a look at this kid, he's kind of doing this or that. It might be worth putting in a referral to the psych or the OT now, but then we can prevent this from becoming a bigger issue later. A lot more proactive in terms of getting behaviour support plans off the ground then. So it kind of all started with that. I started to feel a little bit like, that I just always wanted more than what I was able to provide. And I started to feel a little bit like, hey, you know what, I just don't really feel like I'm making a difference here. I really want more for the kids. We had mostly kids on low-tech systems or light tech, which are great, and we still use them today, but we use them in conjunction with high-tech AAC. So I went and got a lot of professional development myself that I just sought out, because I'm like, I need more. I'm kind of sick of just doing the same thing all the time and feeling like I was going back in and then addressing the same issues over and over again. And so that's kind of where all of this started from, is that I just became really passionate about the LAMP approach and just started trialing kids on devices. And then we grew a ridiculous amount really quickly. And I was like, oh, how the hell am I going to manage this? Because I went from having 3 kids on devices to 30 very quickly. And then I was like, I need a whole class model for this. I need a system for this to work so that teachers can do stuff without needing me there all the time, because I was doing a lot of on-the-floor coaching, a lot of one-on-one support. And yeah, I just really needed a system. And so I spent years researching, and I got a scholarship for a project, and then this is what it's evolved to now.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Andrea, when you started, some of the ball had been rolling. It was you then that kept pushing it up the hill, sort of, to say what
Andrea basically put a structure around me, which is what I needed, because it was creativity and just a mess, really. And she came in and goes, okay, let's put in some structure. So it was good. I needed her.
Yeah. I think the thing is, there's a couple of things in what Ellen just said. One of them is, from a teacher's perspective, when somebody comes in and tries to teach you when you're on the floor with a bunch of children with an autism spectrum condition, you only have maybe half of your attention on what they're saying, because you've got to have your attention on the children, right? By the nature of the children. So it's very difficult to do on-the-spot training, like on-job training, in our context. So that was one of the challenges that we had. So people would all half hear what you said or misinterpret what you said because they were only half paying attention.
Oh, 100%.
And then they would be like, oh no, I got this. But they would be doing things incorrectly, which is problematic for the growth of the child over the long term. So when I came on board, in the first year that Ellen did this, there was 3 kids. In 2017, we had 42 kids. So we had a 940% growth.
Wow.
In a very short period of time. And as I said before, we have a very fluid and dynamic, constantly changing environment in terms of the children that are in classes and when they join and when they leave and when they move from site to site, which means that we also have teachers that are constantly in need of different information at different times. And so relying on one person's knowledge to get around to all of that is impossible. So in 2018, this year, we will have 61 children on devices, and we have 142 kids at school. So you can imagine how demanding that is in terms of knowledge. And we have everything from novice learners that have never held a device to quite experienced teachers and aides who we actually have introduced a program called the Ambassadors. So on every one of our sites, which are geographically isolated from one another, we have ambassadors. So the ambassadors get extra training from our speech pathologist and our LAMP team, which includes myself and a very experienced teacher's aide. So we train the ambassadors, and they have this beautiful purple folder that has all the magic answers and resources in it. And they are the checkpoint at every site. So anybody that's like, I don't know what to do with this thing, or I can't turn it on, or it's doing something weird with the voice, or, how do I incorporate this into math or whatever, they can go to the ambassador first. And then the ambassador, if they don't know the answer, can come to the LAMP team. And if they don't know the answer, they can go to the speech pathologist or to Ellen. So we've built an entire structure to accommodate the fact that we have an ever increasing number of students and staff that need knowledge, as well as families and parents that come along with all those students. So yeah, we just got a small grant with the University of Wollongong and Aspect and the Chamber of Commerce. So because we live in a relatively small community, and we have so many students on devices, and it's ever increasing, we are actually working on becoming an autism friendly community. So all the businesses will be making adjustments to become more autism friendly, and one of the big components of that is understanding devices. At least recognizing what they are and having the patience while somebody, tries to order something using their device, so that we can be more inclusive of all of our community members.
Wait a second, Andrea. I just want to clarify that for a second. Is there, the way you said that, the way you phrased it, it made it sound like there's a stamp that companies get that says we're autism friendly. Is that? Yeah.
Do you remember this conversation, Chris? We had this conversation at the conference a couple of years ago. So that from that conversation, from a number of other things, we've put together the first steps of an initiative that will take a very long time. Change always takes a long time. But we are dedicated to giving our students the best possible outcomes in adulthood. So yeah, we are. Our students actually designed the badge that the shops will get, and it's an online tool that we're designing at the moment. But we are at the stage at the moment where two members of the autism community, individuals with autism, will be going around to different shops and narrating what they think and feel when they enter these shops. So it's participatory action research again. That's our favorite kind. Hopefully the tool that comes out of it will be globally useful in helping people make adjustments. We understand, of course, that you can't change everything. We want them to be low-cost, simple things, but most of the time that's all it is. It's very simple things.
Sure.
So everybody will be autonomous in what they choose to change, and they will submit that to the tool, which will then deliver them a badge.
My gosh.
So yeah, we're really excited because it's the next step. Because Ellen's dream was to take it to the community. Because we've done the parents, like we're working towards that. We're working with the teachers and the aides. And the next logical thing is to take it broader so that everybody can succeed when they leave our structured school context. Yeah.
I just also wanted to acknowledge as well, like this is part of a much bigger project on our organisation's behalf as well. So they've done a lot of work with other parts of the community in New South Wales. So they're currently doing, or they've already done a project with Taronga Zoo, which is our zoo in Sydney, about having times where people with autism can go there, where they've made a lot of changes there. So, they're allowed to enter the zoo an hour earlier when it's quieter, and they've done a lot of work with Taronga Zoo. Also, some of our supermarkets they've done work with. So there's just started an initiative called Quiet Hour in Coles supermarkets across the country, really. So people with autism can go into Coles at what's called Quiet Hour, so there won't be, the radio playing. There's a lot of changes they've made just in terms of like the cash registers, and there's going to be fruit available. The lights will be dimmed. They've done a lot of work with Coles. They're also currently doing a project with All Australian Beaches as well, trying to make them more accessible for people in the autism spectrum. So, we kind of want to do this autism friendly community project. which eventually my idea was originally that I wanted to train up some local shops so that we could help the kids generalize their skills on their device, to be able to go into the local McDonald's or a local cafe, order something using their system, and that the shopkeepers would know how to respond to them naturally. So we really wanted to do a lot of communication partner work. So that was the original idea, and then it kind of just grew into, well, we could accredit these cafes and things with, so that they know if there's a person with autism waiting in line, that might actually be really hard for them. If there's someone behind them that touches them lightly, like that's actually quite stressful for them. So there'll be, adjustments like that that we can make for those cafes that earn their stamp or their sticker.
That sounds awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, importantly, it's broader than cafes and grocery shops. We're also working with doctors' offices and dentists. So if our student only has 5 words, they need to be able to communicate what the issue is to their medical professional or what have you. So it's a long road. We're not patting ourselves on the back just yet, but it's a step in the right direction, we think.
So let me ask you this question. From the videos that you mentioned and then this initiative, is there a way people can who aren't involved in your school or don't live in your area learn more? Is there a place to watch the videos? Have you shared those, or are they allowed to be shared? And then the initiative that you're talking about, the what did you call it? Autism
Friendly Community.
Autism Friendly Communities. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was like what the stamp said, but okay, Autism Friendly. Is there a website or something where people can go to learn more about what changes?
We definitely want to develop something like that. I think because we've just been doing all this kind of research, and I feel like every time we do something, we're like, oh, how can we do that better? And then, we want to change it. We want to improve it. And so we're probably still at that point where we're like, we love what we're doing, but yeah, we're still in that research kind of phase. So we want to kind of get everything as tight as possible, I guess. Definitely with the parent videos, we've been asked for them quite a lot, and we definitely want to have that available as a package at some point that we can, give to people. But yeah, it's still very much a rough version at this point, just to kind of get everything off the floor. So time is an issue, but we're kind of working on that, seeing if we can get a grant or something.
Do it. Tomorrow I want
like a grant that can release us off our jobs so that we can just do this, because we do this kind of on top of our regular work. So yeah, this isn't something we're just paid to do. It's on top of all of our other duties. So we really, really want. So if there's anyone out there listening that wants to pay for us just to do this for a year or something, we'd love that.
It'd be well worth it. It would be well worth someone to fund that sort of initiative.
Yeah. Thanks for the plug.
So let me ask you last question. We'll wrap up because I know I've taken a bunch of your time here. So it's a kind of a question I like to ask at the end of any interview, which is, what is driving you right now? What are you curious about? What is kind of floating your boat? What is keeping you when you wake up in the morning, you're like, this is what I want to learn more about. What's going on?
At the moment, I have become quite interested in multisensory language learning and how we can utilize that methodology and approach in conjunction with kids on devices to teach reading and writing. So I'm still focused on, making sure that our teachers and our parents and such are working towards becoming more fluent and educated around the device itself. But I'm also quite interested in, from a teaching perspective, how do we build literacy skills for children that are using whole words and that may have limited communicative language. So that's where I'm focused right now. And of course the Autism Friendly Community initiative is a big passion of mine. So that's awesome. Kind of where I'm going this year. And we're going to work towards getting our course for teachers accredited by our body so that teachers get professional development hours for those. So
awesome. Fantastic. What about you, Ellen?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of my time's taken up with my kind of management duties. So, you know, this year I just need to keep consulting on all the projects that they're still running at the school. I think I still see a couple of clients, and I have a really, really gorgeous kid that I'm working with at the moment who has just incredible knowledge, but he also on his device, but he's also has really significant challenging behavior as well. So yeah, that's kind of a passion of mine is really how we can really support that communication development for that level of complex child at the moment, who, will go out and push and hit and bite anybody, but, also has this amazing kind of language stuck in there. So really that's where I'm kind of focused at the moment in terms of what really drives me, because that kid is, there's really so much more to him than his behavior. And we're lucky in the context that we work in, but in terms of we know that he'll be supported in a positive manner. But yeah, I really want to kind of develop something around that one day that, we can share and present. So I've still been thinking about that for a while, but I don't really know how I'm going to go about that at this point. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking your time to share the way you were doing things. I think you some huge takeaways of mine were like the Voxer Autism Friendly Initiative, the videos, the blended learning, all of that is just so amazing. So thank you again.
Well, welcome back. I think that was a great interview. We definitely want to hear what you think, especially about things in your community that you like to see in terms of accommodations. So let us know.
If you guys haven't already, please come find us on Facebook. You just search Talking with Tech, and you can ask us questions. We love feedback. So leave us a comment, ask us any questions that you have, and we would love to hear from you.
And please go to the podcast app and subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, tell a friend.
Well, once again, for Lucas Stuber, Rachel Madel, and Chris Bouguet, this was Talking with Tech. Thanks for listening. We will talk at you more next week.